Alright everybody, we have another build video today, and today we are tackling the Arcstrider Hunter. And all three of these builds are, funny enough, in PvE, not PvP. So our first build of the day will, as usual, be the top tree of Arcstrider. So, if you don't know how it works, basically, when you punch someone, you get your dodge back. And if you have Gambler's Dodge on, your dodge gives you your melee back when you're near enemies. So, if you have Gambler's Dodge on with Top Tree, you get an endless chain of melees, and those melees progressively deal more damage, and that stacks like 3 times. It's really good with Liar's Handshake, but that's not what I'm doing today. Today, I'm using Gemini Jester. This is a really good PvP exotic that I feel like a lot of people just skip over and just go to like Stompies or things like that. But Gemini Jester is an amazing PvP exotic. It basically is a blinding nade at your feet whenever you dodge. It doesn't deal damage, but it does disorient enemies. So what you can do is get yourself a little bit of protection when you're running through enemies, meleeing and dodging the whole time. I believe there is a little bit of a cooldown on Gemini Jester, so it won't happen every time you dodge, but every like second or third time, you're gonna blind the enemies near you, giving you a little bit more protection. To make this better, I used Crimson just in case I got into a sticky situation. I could just quickly heal myself with it. I also used blinding nades, so if an enemy's far away, I could of course disorient them. And I'm using Falling Guillotine just because Vortex frames, even though they've been nerfed multiple times, are still really good. So if there's an enemy that's a little bit stronger, I can always just whip out my Falling Guillotine, hit them, or if I don't have my stacks up to hit them, I could do that. Basically, majors aren't going to hurt you too much, and just your general adds aren't going to hurt you because they're blinded. So that's pretty solid. You could use an Ikelos SMG and maybe an ignition code if you want to spawn Warmind cells. You could get the arc ones, so you pick them up and you have a higher chance of spawning them. Or it sends out the chain lightning. Maybe you do Warmind's protection to give yourself a little bit more health, basically. And there's others you could do. The one that makes enemies disoriented, concussed, push them back. There's multiple things you could do there. Charge with Light mods could be great with this. Of course, Protective Light's always good. And Reactive Pulse and Radiant Light would still be great options. Radiant Light having the secondary effect of giving you additional strength, and Reactive Pulse giving you an overshield when you do a finisher for its secondary effect, and its primary effect releasing Chain Lightning if you're damaged while surrounded, which is your main job, is just being surrounded. So Charge with Light mods are great with this build. You can do Warmind stuff, but that's a lot of RNG for this build, so I would highly recommend going into a big swarm of enemies, using your hands, and use Charge with Light mods. Protective Light, of course, Reactive Pulse, and Radiant Friends. Then, of course, your Charge Harvester, So, this build is pretty good. It's probably not the best build. Of course, it's no Liar's Handshake with 1-2 punch, but with only 2 shotguns that I know of currently having 1-2 punch, that build's a little hard to accomplish, being that you either have to do Garden of Salvation and be lucky enough to get a, 1-2 punch Prophet of Doom, and then I don't even remember what the other 1-2 punch shotgun, I think it's Retold Tale, so you have to do Dreaming City RNG. It's a lot of RNG, and it's only on 2 different weapons, sadly. So while this may not be the boss slaying power of the old school Liar's Handshake with 1-2 punch shotgun builds, it's not supposed to do that. It's for clearing adds with abilities. It does give you more slots for boss damage. I mean, you can use a primary that's a little more boss focused, so maybe a Cerberus +1, because that does do pretty good primary damage. It's just not great for adds. And then you could use a rocket launcher or a Falling Guillotine preferably, just in case you need to quickly wipe out an enemy that's close, then maybe you want to run a sniper. So it does give you some more flexibility compared to other builds, being that your abilities are your ad clear. So maybe try this out. It's pretty fun just dodging around and meleeing everything. I would highly recommend using Charge with Light mods again. So yeah, try this out. Next up, we have a bit more of a just fun, goof off, mess around build. It's not great by far, but it's going to be using Middle Tree Arcstrider with Salvation's Grip. Yeah, Salvation's Grip is being used in a build. It's shocking, I know. Now, what I learned doing this is Salvation's Grip combined with Anarchy, not that bad, really, because Anarchy does shatter the stasis crystals automatically, giving a big burst of damage, which I believe is higher than an average grenade launcher, other than something like Anarchy. So if you have someone in your fire team using Anarchy, it could be a good thing to combo with it. But basically the idea behind this build is to just use your heavy melee on the stasis crystals when either ads are near or bosses or anything like that. It gives you a decent burst of damage that's a little bit better. And for ads, it does give you a larger area of effect for that damage. And those stasis crystals do pretty good work at just instantly killing those ads, even if they're not hit directly by your melee. It's not really a practical build. I do have a video of me just messing around with it in a lost sector, and it did do a lot of damage to that boss. Now, it does do a lot of knockback because I think stasis weakens enemies to knockback, plus the Middle Tree Arcstrider melee does, I think, knockback. I was using those 6 Coyote, that way I could just dodge and get another melee and have that twice. It's a pretty fun build. It's not practical, really, but it's just fun to mess around breaking crystals with your heavy melee. So maybe try it out. I wouldn't suggest it in anything like Sorrow's Harbor, just because there's so many enemies that it's hard to get it set up and stay alive. But if you're just messing around in lost sectors or you're just goofing off in patrol, yeah, try it out. Maybe you want to do it for a couple strikes. Not nightfalls, of course, but just messing around strikes, it could work. I paired it with a Blasphemer and just the Stars and Shadows just to fill up those slots, and Blasphemer's good, so yeah, you can do what you want with it, really. It's not great. I mean, Salvation's Grip is Salvation's Grip, and that's about that. And Middle Tree Arcstrider is far better in PvP than it is PvE. I'm sorry about that. You can do this in PvP, but the amount of heavy ammo you'll get, it's just not really worth it. Maybe it could be decent for Gambit. Like, you just Salvation's Grip the blockers, heavy attack them, and then clear the bank. Or you do it to an invader, or you do it as you invade. I'm not quite sure. I think I'll test this out in Gambit at some point, and maybe do a video on that separately. But yeah, it's just pretty fun. And I'll try to put an info card up for the video where I first did the stasis crystal breaking with Middle Tree melee. It's just interesting interaction, but it's not great by any means. Next up, we have a build for Bottom Tree, and this is going to be using, wait for it, Borealis. Now, Borealis is probably one of the worst exotics in the game, according to a lot of people, and I think it was ranked like in the top 5 or 10 worst exotics in game. I think it's better than a lot of people give it credit for. This season, not as much as last, because last season had shield break or anti-barrier snipers, which was amazing for Borealis. And for Izigami, it was ridiculously strong. But Borealis, basically, you can pop shields with a sniper, so it's hard light, but it takes special ammo. Borealis has never been like great. For match game, it's not too bad, and that's kind of what I'm going for here, is a decent match game build. So I put on Dragon Shadow with Borealis. If you don't know already, I have a video up about this interaction, but you can reload Borealis and keep Ionic Return. So the damage buff on Borealis, you can keep that if you stow Borealis and dodge with Dragon Shadow. The same interaction happens with Sympathetic Arsenal and a few other things like Inertia Override on Titan, I think, does it too. So you can keep the damage buff on Borealis, which isn't a great damage buff. It could use a buff. But you get to keep that infinitely, which you're not really supposed to. And I hope they don't get rid of this bug because it just makes Borealis usable. So if you use it with, I think no, not Arc Logic. You can use this with like False Promises or something like that. Something kinetic with Sympathetic Arsenal. That way, just in case you don't have a dodge for whatever reason, say you're not running max mobility because I guess you don't want to, you can just get Sympathetic Arsenal to reload your Borealis for you. But if you're running max mobility, that helps you a lot on Bottom Tree Arcstrider, because on Bottom Tree Arcstrider, when you dodge, you're harder to kill. So that helps you a lot. So you get to keep your damage buff on Borealis, you're harder to kill while you're dodging, you get your melee back, you get all of your weapons reload because of Dragon Shadow. It's a pretty good build, except for the fact that's Arcstrider in PvE. But still, you get weak, you run faster. You dodge, you don't die. It's still pretty good in general content. It's not your Nightfall loadout, of course, but it still has its uses. I use it with a rocket launcher because that's something I could just dump and stow. And again, Sympathetic Arsenal could reload that too. Same with Dragon Shadow. So it lets you do pretty high burst damage if you load it out correctly. So yeah, Borealis isn't that bad. Not to mention the fact that high energy fire stacks with Borealis' damage buff. So what you do is you use Charge with Light mods. Get a Charge Harvester. It's really not as bad as people want to say Borealis is. Its damage buff stacks and it's potentially infinite if you do it right. I'm going to leave an info card to the video where I show off that it's possible, just in case you doubt it. But yeah, it's not that bad. So yeah, just try Borealis out. It's pretty decent.